Have you ever stepped into a moment where everything seems backward? Like the harder you try, the further things seem to slip away. Life has a way of surprising us with these unexpected turns, making us question whether we're on the right path. You've prayed for strength, yet you feel weaker than ever. You're believing for a breakthrough, but things seem to break apart instead. It's easy to think, this isn't working, but here's what I've learned. When you're facing great opposition, it's often because you're stepping into a great opportunity. What looks like a setback is really a setup. What feels like defeat is actually a doorway. The very thing that appears to be pushing you down might just be the thing that's about to lift you up. The struggle, the resistance, the pressure, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of growth. Think about a seed planted in the ground. It doesn't just grow overnight. It takes time, patience, and the right conditions to break through the surface and flourish. The process is slow and often hidden, but beneath the soil, life is unfolding in its own perfect timing. It looks like it's been buried, dark, hidden, and forgotten. But what's really happening? It's being positioned for growth. The soil isn't the seed's enemy. It's its environment for transformation. And just like that seed, you might feel pressed down by life's challenges, but you're actually being positioned for a breakthrough. In life, when you're feeling overwhelmed, discouraged, or tempted to give up, that's when you have to remember this principle. It's just the opposite. The enemy doesn't fight what isn't a threat. The pressure isn't proof you're going nowhere. It's proof you're on the verge of going somewhere significant. There was a young woman who dreamed of starting her own business. She had the talent, the skills, and the heart. But every door she knocked on closed in her face. The more she tried, the more resistance she faced. One day she said, maybe it's just not meant to be. But what she didn't know was that those closed doors were pushing her toward a better opportunity. After months of struggle, she stumbled upon a niche she hadn't considered before. That's where her business exploded. The same opposition that discouraged her was the force that directed her to success. You might be in a season where everything seems to be going in reverse. You're working hard, but the promotion goes to someone else. You're showing kindness, but you're being met with coldness. Don't let the present reality fool you. It's just the opposite. What you can't see is that the right doors are about to open. The right connections are being lined up. The opportunities you've been praying for are already on the way. Opposition often feels like a force working against us, but in reality, it can serve as a catalyst for growth and discovery. When we encounter resistance, it pushes us to dig deeper, to tap into strengths we didn't know we had. It forces us out of our comfort zones and into a place of innovation and creativity. Imagine an athlete building muscle. The resistance they feel isn't there to break them, but to build endurance and strength. In the same way, the challenges you face aren't meant to stop you. They're designed to stretch you and prepare you for what's next. When you find yourself in a tough season, remember that the presence of opposition doesn't mean you're off track. In fact, it often signifies that you're right where you need to be. The resistance isn't there to defeat you, it's there to refine you. Each obstacle you overcome becomes a stepping stone, elevating you to new heights. The difficulties you face today are preparing you for the blessings of tomorrow. There are times when our feelings tell us to give up, to walk away, to stop believing. Emotions can fluctuate based on circumstances. One moment you feel hopeful, the next you feel discouraged. If you let feelings lead the way, you'll find yourself on a roller coaster of uncertainty. But there comes a point where you must rise above what you feel and stand on what you know. You may feel unqualified, but you know you've been equipped for the task. You may feel like nothing is changing, but you know that something is happening behind the scenes. Feelings are real, but they aren't always reliable. They reflect the surface level of what's happening, not the deeper truth. Imagine a cloudy day. It feels like the sun has disappeared, but the reality is the sun is still shining just beyond the clouds. In the same way, just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean your efforts are in vain. When the voices of doubt get loud, choose to hold on to what you know instead of how you feel. Perspective is a powerful thing, and when we take a moment to shift our viewpoint, it opens the door to new understanding and prepares us for the analogy that follows. Two people can look at the exact same situation and see it completely differently. One sees a challenge and feels defeated. The other sees that same challenge and feels determined. It's not the situation that makes the difference. It's the perspective. Life doesn't always go the way we planned. Obstacles arise, people disappoint us, and circumstances shift unexpectedly. In those moments, how we choose to see the situation determines how we walk through it. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain. From that vantage point, the climb seems impossible. The path looks steep, the peak unreachable. But if you were to get into an airplane and fly high above that same mountain, your perspective would change. You'd see the full landscape, the trails winding to the top, the beauty that was hidden from the ground. In life, challenges feel overwhelming when we only see them from the ground level. But when we elevate our perspective, when we choose to see through eyes of faith, what once looked like an obstacle starts to look like an opportunity. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, with the Egyptians closing in behind them, their perspective told them it was over. From their viewpoint, there was no way out. But from God's perspective, it was the perfect setup for a miracle. The waters parted and they walked through on dry ground. What seemed like a dead end was actually a divine detour into freedom. Sometimes life requires us to shift our perspective. Instead of seeing difficulties as punishment, we begin to see them as preparation. Instead of seeing delays as denials, we see them as opportunities for growth. The mountain may be high, but when you change your perspective, you realize the climb is building your strength. The betrayal may hurt, but when you shift your focus, you'll see it's positioning you for better relationships. Perspective doesn't change the situation. It changes how we experience the situation. Scripture reminds us that when we are weak, that's when we are strong. That's not just a nice idea, it's a spiritual principle. When you feel like you can't take another step, that's when God steps in with supernatural strength. When it looks like the opposition is winning, that's when you're actually being strengthened for greater victories. Life has a way of presenting us with negative situations that seem impossible to navigate. The loss of a job, the end of a relationship, a sudden health challenge. These moments can feel overwhelming, but here's the beauty. What starts as negative can be transformed into something positive. A diamond is formed under pressure and gold is refined by fire. In the same way, the difficulties we face have the potential to bring out our greatest strengths. Take the story of a man who lost his job unexpectedly. At first, he was devastated. The security he'd known for years was gone in a moment, but instead of staying in that place of defeat, he decided to use the time to pursue a passion he had long ignored. He started a small business from his kitchen table, and within a few years, it grew beyond anything he imagined. What looked like a negative turn became the catalyst for a positive future. Turning the negative into positive isn't about denying the difficulty. It's about deciding that the difficulty won't define you. I remember a friend who lost everything in a business deal gone wrong. He was devastated, but instead of staying in that place of defeat, he chose to see the setback as a setup for something greater. He started over with a new perspective and eventually built a company even more successful than the first. It wasn't the loss that shaped his future. It was his decision to turn the negative into positive. It's about looking at the loss and saying, this hurts, but I will grow through it. It's choosing to believe that even when one chapter ends, the next chapter can be even better. When we shift our mindset, the very thing that tried to break us becomes the thing that builds us. Strength isn't built during times of ease and comfort. It's forged in the furnace of struggle. When life stretches you beyond your limits, when you feel like you've given everything you have and it still isn't enough, that's when strength is being formed. Like a muscle that grows by being pushed to its limit, our character is strengthened when we face difficulties head on. It's in the struggle that we discover what we're truly made of. There's something remarkable about those moments when you're pressed on every side, yet choose to keep going. It's not about never feeling weak. It's about finding the courage to stand in the middle of weakness. Struggle has a way of teaching us lessons we can't learn any other way. It teaches us resilience, patience, and a deeper reliance on God's grace. Without struggle, there's no growth. Without resistance, there's no breakthrough. Consider the story of the butterfly. When it's time for a caterpillar to transform, it must fight its way out of the cocoon. If someone tries to help by cutting the cocoon open, the butterfly emerges weak, unable to fly. The struggle of breaking free strengthens its wings. In the same way, the struggles we face aren't there to destroy us. They're designed to develop us. Reversing the narrative means shifting the way we interpret the challenges we face. I once knew someone who faced repeated rejections in their career. Instead of seeing it as failure, they decided to view each rejection as a redirection. Eventually, this mindset led them to a role they never imagined, one that perfectly aligned with their passion and skills. It means looking beyond the surface and seeing the hidden potential within the problem. Instead of seeing failure as the end, we begin to see it as feedback, a lesson guiding us toward a better approach. Reversing the narrative isn't about ignoring reality. It's about rewriting the meaning we attach to that reality. Imagine a potter shaping a piece of clay. Every press, every turn, every moment of pressure serves a purpose. The clay doesn't resist, it yields to the process, trusting that the hands of the potter know exactly what they're doing. In life, when the narrative tells you that you're being broken, choose to see it differently. You're not being broken, you're being molded. You're not falling apart, you're being formed for something greater. Opposite seasons bring balance to the world around us. Think about how winter prepares the ground for spring. The cold, barren months may seem lifeless, but underneath the surface, roots are strengthening and the soil is being renewed. Without the stillness of winter, the vibrancy of spring wouldn't be possible. In the same way, the difficult seasons of life, the ones that feel like everything has gone dormant, are often the seasons where our inner strength is being fortified. The challenges, the quiet, the waiting, they're not signs that nothing is happening. They're indicators that growth is taking place beneath the surface. So when life tells you it's over, remind yourself it's just the opposite. When fear whispers that you'll never get well, never get free, never see the dream come to pass, stand firm and say, I'm closer than I've ever been. The pressure isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're on the verge of flourishing. Stay in faith. Keep showing up. Keep believing, because what you see today may look like defeat, but if you stay the course, you'll realize it was just the opposite. The challenge you thought would break you was the very thing God used to bless you beyond what you imagined. And as we bring this to a close, remember this: life's greatest victories often come disguised as struggles. The darkest nights give birth to the brightest mornings. The moments when you feel like giving up are usually the moments right before a breakthrough. So when you're tempted to walk away, to stop believing, to settle for less, remind yourself that it's just the opposite. Keep your faith strong, your perspective high, and your heart anchored in hope, because the best is yet to come and your story is far from over.